Hi, hello folks, and today's video is really just another Sunday video in response to some queries I've had. If you've been watching the vlogs, you'll know that the last 4 that I did were all in the camper van. That one there, which I got a shot of for a few days and travelled around the west coast, well, the west coast, a certain area of the west coast of Scotland, and it was really good. Anyway, I've had quite a few requests, I suppose, and questions about the camper van, and people on social asking if I could just do a quick vlog about my thoughts and my experience with the camper van. And if you do follow me on social and watch the vlogs, it's no secret that I really want a camper van at some point, and I think it's it's good practice to maybe try these things out because they are really expensive, but I'll get onto that later on. So what I've done is I've put together, from my short experience, remember this is my first sort of experience in a camper van, so it's not an in-depth review. If you're looking for that, go elsewhere, there's plenty of those on the market. This is just my experience of my week in the camper van. So I've put together a list of what I thought was brilliant about the camper van, and a list of what I thought maybe wasn't so good. And this is primarily using the camper van as a base for hiking, which I did in the west coast for the adventures, not so much for families and what have you, although I maybe will touch on the family bit and the camper van as well later on. Anyway, so to try and stop waffling, I'll try and go through this as quickly as possible, make it a short video. So the pros, I think I've written down a few things here just out of shot, so I can keep my train of thought going, so I'll end up waffling and going off piece. So the pros, the first thing that I should say, that the camper van that I had, before I go on to the advantages, it was a T5 2012 diesel model, and yeah, it was pretty good. It was the first thing was it was okay to drive. It wasn't, it was a van. It was actually quite nice. The seating position was quite high up. There was pros and cons to that, which I'll come on to the cons, but you were quite high up. And I drove it for about 3.5 hours to get to the initial start of the walk that I went on first, and it wasn't too bad. It was okay. There was motorways, there were small roads and what have you, and I really enjoyed it. The other thing about the drive is these camper vans, there's nothing worse, and I know a lot of you will probably relate to this, and some people might disagree, but there's nothing worse than being on a small single track road and there's a big massive camper van ahead of you or coming towards you. It's quite scary sometimes. So I think if I was to get a camper van, I'd certainly get one about that size, because the width of the vehicle isn't actually that much more. I think you'll need to look at the specs, but I think it's roughly about the same width as your standard car. Looking at it there, it was fine. I didn't have any issues, and I was on some really narrow roads, single track roads with passing places. If you've been on the road down Resipol and into Sunart, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and it was absolutely fine. And that's one of my major kind of fears about getting one of these, is you're going to be hogging the road and what have you, so on and so forth. But that was great. Wasn't wide, it wasn't too wide. There was no issues at all. No issues I wouldn't have come across if I was in a normal car. So what else? Yeah, when I got there, another advantage is that, when you get to the start of the walk or your adventure, it was so easy to get ready, as opposed to sort of stepping outside and in the wind and the rain outside your car with the boot open, try to get your shoes on without getting your socks wet and all that sort of stuff. It was such luxury, just sliding that door open of the van, going in there, getting everything ready. Once you're ready to go, just hop outside and off you go. That was really nice. There was lots of space in the back of the van. In fact, the first few times I used it, I didn't even pop the roof. I just had the roof down and sat in the back seat, got my stuff ready, and it was just a really leisurely start. And another advantage of that is you can have a coffee and a bite to eat in luxury inside the van with the heater on, with some music playing, ready to go, which I did, which was fantastic. And I must also say that if you'd watched the vlog, you'll know this. When you think about these adventures, you've got it in your head, or I certainly do. I always have these visions of beautiful sunny weather, midge-free, coasting along the road, pulling over at the side, and beautiful sunshine and what have you. But the experience I had with the van was in torrential weather, so it was a really good test for these sort of things, using it as a base camp for hiking. And actually, I think it worked better in the rain because of these features. So another another advantage related to that was when I was on the hill, I didn't have this nag or pressure, time pressure I suppose it is, in the back of my head. If I'm away just on a normal day trip in the car, I've always got this in the back of my head. I need to get back to the car, so I've got a long drive home. I need to go back and see the kids, you know, get home for doing things and what have you. And that always seems to play in the back of my head, you know, getting home and the drive home. With the camper van, there was none of that. Obviously, if you're using the camper van just as a mode of transport, you still need to go home. You've still got that worry, but with the camper, there was none of that sort of time pressure. I knew I was coming off the hill and I could spend as much time at the van as I wanted, really. So that was lovely. I didn't have to go to a B&B, didn't have to worry about getting to a hotel, didn't have to worry about putting a tent up and what have you. It was literally, I knew as soon as I got to the car, I could put the heater on, get inside, and just sort of relax and get myself ready. And that was a big advantage as well, especially after a wet day, was getting back to the van, sticking the kettle on, putting the heater on, and being able to change out your damp, wet, sweaty, smelly clothes with the door closed, the curtains closed, in the heat, without worrying about peeling your soaking trousers off on the side of a busy motorway, and people inadvertently exposing your backside to passing tourists and what have you. So that was a really big advantage, actually. Next advantage was, once that's all done, is the fact that you can literally, in Scotland anyway, as long as you're not, shall I say, taking the piss, you can literally go to any lay-by as long as you arrive late enough and you're leaving early enough. I'm sure there's rules and regulations and other videos about how and what you can do, but certainly where I was, on the first night, I just drove halfway down to my next location and found a lovely campsite. In fact, not campsite, lay-by. That's a lay-by there, with sea views over to the Scottish Islands. I was looking over to Egg that evening, watching thunderstorms roll across the Isles. It was absolutely fantastic. So that's a big advantage. You don't have to worry about getting places by a certain time. You just pull over. As I said, as long as you're not taking the mick, and you arrive late, leave early, and leave no trace, as you do with that. Yes, you can relax as well. I found the heating system was really good. It was quite comfortable at night. You can take the car, I suspect, depending on the parking, you can take it to the start of the hike, stay overnight, so you're not rushing in the morning. You don't have to drive in the morning. You know, you can get up, have your breakfast, just head on to the hill, which is just fantastic. What else did we have? Yeah, you don't have to, you know, you can be a lot more flexible. And for those of you that watch the videos, you'll know that the first night I did stay just in this lay-by here, as you can see. But the other 3 nights I actually did stay in the campsite. But irrespective of that, you can be a lot more flexible. I found the weather conditions were changeable. As I said, it was rainy, but on some days the weather was improving. So I just loitered in the van and watched a few DVDs, did a bit of work on my laptop, dotted around, had a shower in the campsite. Showers, it gives you that luxury. I wouldn't be able to do that really in a car. I'd pull up and I'd be off up the hill. There's not too much to do in a car. Could read, I suppose. Okay, what else have we got? Yeah, it's comfy. Another advantage is I had a comfy night's sleep. It was really, really convenient. Just pulling over and getting the bed down and going to sleep. So that was it. You know, as I said, these are just basic advantages, which I found a really good base for hiking and outdoors adventures and what have you. What about some disadvantages? So some disadvantages, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm kind of being a bit nitpicking here, shall we say. But the driving position, I said before, one of the advantages was it wasn't too bad to drive. But one of the things about these camper vans is, well, they're vans, and I'm quite tall. I'm about 6'1", 6'2", and the chair doesn't actually go too far back. So with my big lanky legs, after about 3 hours driving in the same position, I did have to stop a few times and stretch the legs, shall we say, because I'm tall. Another disadvantage is a bit of a faff sometimes to pop the roof I know there's newer ones where you can just press a button. That would be great, but is that really just a luxurious extra? So it's a bit of a faff to put the roof up, and when you're bringing it back down, pulling it back down and making sure it's all secure and what have you, that was a wee bit faff. Another faff is maybe putting the bed down and getting the bed up. That's a bit faffy as well. But these are minor things, you know, in comparison to getting a tent out and all that sort of malarkey. This was luxury. But the main disadvantage is cost. Even to hire these things is expensive, and I was really lucky. I think I said in the first video that this is a hire van, and it's called Disco Daisy, and I said to the owners I would give it a wee plug, so a wee bit of a plug here for them, and they also happen to be my cousins, or one of them was my cousin, and they hired it out, but they were very, very kind and gave me a shot of the van, which was really nice of them. But the cost is, especially if you're thinking of buying them, because I've been saving for a couple of years. I think it'll be another couple of years before I can afford one. I know you can pick them up. You can get, you know, it depends what you're after. Basically, you can get cheaper ones, more expensive ones. It's like cars, but they are super expensive. But at the end of the day, after all this, I mean, that's the main disadvantages. Looking at the pros and the cons, do I still want them? And the answer is, you bet I do. Mainly for what I've talked about here and what you saw in the vlogs for the adventures, but also for myself and my wife to get away for the weekends. I've got 2 kids as well. Now, one of the things I would say about it is if you're thinking of getting one that size, you know, the Volkswagen T5 size, if you're going away with your kids, I'd definitely suggest you get I think you can get these add-on awnings or tents which fit onto the side of the van, because it is quite tight. And I certainly will, if I buy one of these extensions that go on the side for if I'm going away with the family. I wouldn't need it obviously if I'm just going away myself or just me and my wife. But anyway, that's about it. As I said, it was just answering some questions. If you want to see my experience, the last 4 videos have all been my adventures around the west coast of Scotland. So thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and until the next time,